Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. We're going to actually start talking about football today. I know that sounds weird because we haven't really done that, but it occurred to me, Ari Wasserman, that we've gone all these months where normally we would have been breaking down first week matchups and season win totals and all these other things, probably for months at this point. But so many different things have been happening that we haven't even gotten a chance to talk about it yet. And it is June. SEC Media Days is 5 weeks away. I think there's a Media Days before that. I think one of them goes before them. So the season is upon us pretty soon here. We're going to actually need to talk about football. So we're already talking some win totals very, very soon on this show. We're going to have lots of win totals. I noticed a few that are kind of weird. There's one division in particular that Vegas seems to think everyone but one team's going to win every game. So I'm fascinated by that. But Ari, we have a couple different things that we need to start with. You and I were texting on Saturday night because we have no social lives, and that's what we do is text each other about snakes.
Well, what's the snake called again? Something moccasin?
A water moccasin, a cottonmouth.
Like when you said water moccasin, I thought you were talking about like a shoe that you would wear in the lake. Like I've never heard of that before.
You know, they live near you. I looked at the map. There are definitely water moccasins in North Texas.
Okay, well, that's terrifying. So, yeah, I mean, irrational fears is like my favorite thing to talk about. And when we get
You've
into
never heard of a water moccasin before?
Mm-mm. And like I remember when I was a kid and we moved to Arizona, I was like 6 or 7 years old. I remember thinking two things: one, scorpions would always be in my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And two, like rattlesnakes were going to be a major problem for me.
And
like
sidewinders. They got sidewinders in Arizona.
Yeah, day in and day out. And I lived there for 20 years, and I don't think I think I might have seen it once. I don't think I've ever seen a rattlesnake.
So we see water moccasins in Florida, and we also have rattlesnakes. We have eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, and we have copperheads and coral snakes. There are coral snakes that have been found in my neighborhood in the last few months. But like my mother-in-law killed a cottonmouth a few years ago with a shovel in her backyard, texted it to us and said, "What kind of snake was this?" And we're like, "Oh God, why did you get near it? You could have died."
So it says it's as venomous as a rattlesnake, right?
It's a pit viper, which is the same family as rattlesnakes. It is basically a rattlesnake that does not have rattles that can swim.
The swimming part's the terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And you have a pool.
Yeah, but I mean, I would see a cottonmouth in the pool, thankfully. They're pretty big. They get pretty thick. But like where they're really scary, and I remember the first time I encountered when I was with my grandfather, and he lifts a log up and there's a water moccasin, and that's pretty terrifying. So yeah, I am not a fan, but I'm not irrationally afraid. Like if there is one, I will just get away. He'll probably go about his business. If I had to figure out how to kill him, I could probably figure out how to kill him. So it's not that bad. But what are you irrationally afraid of snakes?
So you remember that show Fear Factor?
Yes.
Would you rather get dumped into a coffin full of snakes or scorpions?
Snakes, because they put non-venomous snakes in there. Scorpions are venomous.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of like what about like non-venomous spiders?
I would not like that very much at all, but I could convince myself in my mind. I think all I'm not an arachnid. I don't know what an arachnid expert is called. I'm not that guy.
Oh, no, arachnophobia is the fear. There's a movie about that.
There is. I'm not the guy from Arachnophobia, so I don't know that there are non-venomous spiders. There may be degrees of venomous, but no. If you tell me this spider's harmless, it's not going to kill me, I'm probably going to be okay with that.
I think if you know it going into it that you're going to be fine, I think I would rather have snakes than spiders.
I would not like either one, but I could be convinced and get over it. Like I'm not one of those people who cannot be around a spider. Like I have to kill the spiders in my house. I'm the designated spider killer, and we don't kill snakes unless it's a venomous snake. Like we've had a couple black racers get into our garage. You just scoop them up with the shovel and go put them out in the bushes. You want those snakes because they kill pests and they control the population there.
Well, we're going to talk about irrational fears.
Okay.
But it's funny because one of the irrational fears that a lot of people have is snakes coming out of the toilet.
That's not really a place I'm worried about a snake.
I know, but like if you go, I just Googled it right now, so you can add that to snake toilet.
What else?
To my Google
what else
history.
have you Googled? What else?
Ivy League football.
Okay.
Don Cheadle. Cheddar Bay biscuits. Clown makeup. Water moccasin, and one of those chest bags. I'm thinking about getting one of those chest bags. You know those bags that people wear,
like a weighted bag, like a
no, not like a Mr. Workout bag. Like
you're gonna get a
like
fanny pack that you wear around your chest.
Yes, but I'm not gonna wear it every day.
My wife does
but
that.
It's for the beach.
Yeah, my wife does that.
And now I have snake coming out of toilet. But Cheddar Bay, the fact that Cheddar Bay biscuits are there is I'm so happy.
It just means you haven't done anything since we recorded our last podcast. You haven't worked at all.
But that to me, so like my irrational fears, like let's talk about irrational fears, and I'll let you go first because I have some build up to mine.
Okay,
what's your irrational
fear? Is getting caught in a very tight space. And every Mallrats fan just, what do you mean, like the back of a Volkswagen? No, like some sort of confined space where I can't really get out and I'm just crammed in there and I can't move. Like that is the most terrifying thing to me. Even thinking about it makes me want to just completely shut down.
Do you get antsy like if you're in the back of a car and you're just like, it's like you're stuffed in a car or something? Or is it like just
the back of a car is not bad. You can open a window, all that stuff. I'll tell you exactly where it hit me the worst. Have you ever been in the arch in St. Louis?
Yes.
You ridden up the arch in those little...
Yeah, it's super tight. Yeah.
I thought I was going to die. Like I really thought I was going to hyperventilate and just be done. I was going to pass out, have a heart attack, whatever. Because and at the time I'm pretty big compared to this thing, and it was not pleasant. Yeah. That was a bad deal.
So I have two irrational fears. One, and I don't know if I can, I'm going to say it on the podcast, and if we have to edit it out, then we'll edit it out. But like having to go to the bathroom at the most inopportune time. Like I am like afraid of having to poop like in really, really inopportune times. Like the day of my wedding, like I had a conscious thought like multiple times during the day.
What if I have to poop?
I hope I don't have to go to the bathroom while I'm up there. And I don't have IBS, and I'm a pretty regular person. But for whatever reason, like whenever I have big events in my life or like I'm doing something important, it always crosses my mind.
Needing to poop.
Like what would happen if you have to poop when you're like up at the altar?
You just dance around a little bit and you go poop when you're done.
Yeah, I just like that would be the most uncomfortable thing in the world. And
I'm blessed, I guess. I can poop anywhere. Like it does.
No, I'm not afraid of road games.
Anytime. And but I don't. But I don't worry about it.
Toilet.
Yeah, I don't worry about it hitting me either. Like it happens sometimes, and you manage it.
I know, but like
okay.
I'm saying, but my fear is that it happens at a time where you can't manage it. Like, what am I going to do? Leave bread at the altar and go to the bathroom? Could you imagine that? That would be awful. Even if I'm not afraid of not making it.
Right back.
I'm not talking about like going to the bathroom in my pants. I'm talking about
somebody light a candle,
like a job interview, or like you're like in an interview for some reason, or you're just somewhere where you got to move. So it's like, that's never happened to me, but that's one. And the other one is irrationally, this is one is really irrational because I don't know why I would ever be in the situation, but like anytime I see like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or National Lampoon's Vacation, being in a scenario where I have to hike very far distances in the desert without any water to get to civilization.
I was wondering where you're going with that, because those are three. Two of those things are very much alike, and one of those is very much not.
You know that scene, and I don't know if you've watched Breaking Bad. I hope you have.
I have. I've watched all of Breaking Bad, all of Better Call Saul. I want to say the Better Call Saul one's worse. Like when Saul finally, the way they did the makeup on Bob Odenkirk to have him all chapped up, like it looked like he'd been in the desert for weeks.
Walter White had to roll his money in that barrel.
Oh yeah,
all that money.
I remember.
But to me, I think I would rather die than go through that. Like, I don't think there's anything worse than that. So, but I'll never be in that scenario. So
I'm fine with that because I can keep moving. I'm not trapped in a little hole in the desert. That would be the.
But it is something that creeps into my mind whenever I'm driving through the desert, which is quite often. So, You know, but you're in a car, and I don't know why you'd ever be in the middle of nowhere, but that would just be the worst thing. So that's the irrational fear segment of this show.
Well, I have some irrational fears about these totals. I'm gonna pivot right there because this is one that when I was doing daily sports talk radio, you get to May and June and there's nothing. And then the season totals come out and it's just the greatest day of your life because you finally have something to talk about. But normally they're just kind of there, and there's one or two that you like. I remember 2018, West Virginia had an absurdly low total. It was like 6.5 over under. And you knew it was the best team they were going to have under Dana Holgerson. And it was like, why? What do they think is going to happen here? Like, they're going to win 7 games. So, but there's a few. There's one I saw in particular.
Well, how many games did they end up winning that year?
I think they ended up winning 8 or 9 in the regular season. They almost.
So you're saying that like you're able to spot totals in June that don't make any sense at all.
That didn't make any sense.
Okay.
There's a couple here who don't make a lot of sense. So I went on BetMGM and I was looking at the 2022 totals, which just recently came out, and there are some that don't make any sense, but there's one that made me think of you because it's not that it doesn't make sense. It actually makes perfect sense, but it is a test of your theory, a theory that you have espoused many, many times on this show. You ready for this?
I'm afraid, but yes.
Don't be afraid, because this is one I lean toward thinking you may be right here, but I'm not sure.
It's like a solar eclipse. You see it rarely, but when you do, it's always nice,
Yeah.
you know?
Clemson over 10.5 minus 110, under 10.5 minus 110.
Yeah. So you're on the same bandwagon of this is the begin, like last year was the beginning of the end.
I'm not there yet. You fully believe that.
Well, if you think the under here, that you are there, because if they do it again, then you're at the beginning of the end.
I don't know if I want it to. It's not one of those where I'd say hammer the under, but you would, and I understand why you would, and it feels like the perfect test because a lot of the way they do it is they play with the money line to get you to go one direction or the other. This one, they're like, we don't know which direction we want you to go.
Yeah, well, the difference between this year, because last year you were like over 11.5, right?
Because the schedule, yeah. And you were right that they
played Georgia last year. So I think I think the number was
no,
10.5.
I wasn't over 11.5. I didn't say
I think you were over 10.5.
It was 10.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought they'd go 11-1. I felt very confident they could go 11-1.
So this year you get the same exact number and you don't have Georgia on your schedure.
And I don't feel nearly as confident.
And like last year, I was like, this is going to be under. I promise you, they're not going to make the playoff last year. But this year, I look at the schedule and I think their biggest non-conference game. I guess they have to play at Notre Dame. So
yes,
that I guess is what replaces Georgia. But I think that that's a manageable game. I mean, like last year, I was certain that they were going to lose to Georgia.
If their offense is what it was last year, they will not win 11 games.
So where are you on DJ Uiagalelei? Do you think it's like over for him, or do you think there's a chance?
I don't know that's over. You see quarterbacks get better. I mean, look, Kenny Pickett last year is a prime example. Kenny Pickett was not the guy he was in 2021, in 2020 or 2019. He developed into that. And so that happens sometimes. So perhaps DJ develops into that, or they make a change and then everything snaps into place.
That could happen too. That's the thing that I don't know about. I don't like, because Dabo's done this before, but when he did it with Kelly Bryant, it wasn't with a 5-star quarterback that had as much fanfare as DJ. But like, is there a chance that halfway through the schedule that their quarterback will be different?
I think there's definitely a chance.
So like if Cade Klubnik is like playing and is like a stud and is the next Trevor Lawrence,
then everything probably winds up being fine.
So this is the thing about their schedule though, Andy, is that they don't play a game that I think that they have Notre Dame's in November. So like when you look at it, they play at Georgia Tech to start the season on a Monday.
NC State is the one that would concern me the most.
So NC State's not till October. So like if they're probably gonna beat Georgia Tech, right? Even though it's kind of a tricky opener and it's in Atlanta, I believe. Then they're going to obviously beat Furman, Louisiana Tech, at Wake Forest. I don't know what we're expecting Wake Forest to do this year, but
we're expecting Wake Forest to be pretty good, but
you saw what
that
happened
game
last year when Clemson
they
was
were
playing. Yeah,
exactly. Wake Forest was very good last year, and they got out talented by Clemson. The other thing about Clemson is if that D line stays healthy, which it was not
got a
last year.
nasty D line.
Yeah, there's not much opposing offense they're going to be able to do, but it does feel like a test for your theory because again, most of these totals, the sports book is kind of telegraphing which direction they're trying to push you, and this is one they're not. They're just saying we don't know. You pick.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a very critical time for Clemson football. Because they missed the playoff last year, and I think I got into an argument with somebody on Twitter the other day about this because everybody's always I was the person that said they weren't going to make the playoff last year, and everyone said I was a Clemson hater, and then it didn't happen. But why didn't they make the playoff? Was it because my thought process was right, or is it because they got too banged up during the year? Because it's I could look at it either way.
Because here's the thing, and this is the part where I lean toward you being correct on this. I thought they'd go, you know what? Beyond the D-line injuries, there were some issues. There were issues with the offensive line. There were issues with not having dynamic receivers that were getting open. There were issues with, nobody, and obviously you don't necessarily replace Travis Etienne, but it wasn't that dynamic. Now, Will Shipley got hurt. A healthy Will Shipley, I think, changes that too. So, but they didn't go into the portal and spot recruit offensive linemen to try to plug in, which I thought they might try to do. And I just don't know.
So here's my thing with Clemson. I think that they are done being an annual contender, like an Alabama or a Georgia. But I don't think that they're just going to flash out.
They're not done being a contender.
Yeah, they're still going to be good. So, to me, I could totally see taking the over here because I don't know if there's two games that you could circle and say they're going to lose. Yeah. And I think at Notre Dame will be an interesting game. We'll be very curious to see how good Notre Dame is under Marcus Freeman in year one. But it's I think they'll beat Georgia Tech. I think they'll beat Furman, Louisiana Tech, Wake Forest. NC State's a big game. At BC is a win. I don't know. What are we expecting out of Florida State this year?
Better, but probably not good enough to beat
better,
but probably not good enough to beat a good version of Clemson. Now
I can't find two losses on this schedule.
That's
I can't find one loss. I can't find and of course, if they're I think that at bottom, unless this team completely implodes, I think they're 10-2. So basically, what you need to do is, do you think they actually have a chance of losing to NC State, Florida State, or Notre Dame, two of those three, and then maybe Miami? I don't know. South Carolina.
Yeah, we don't. Miami would be one, because Tyler Van Dyke played very well at the end of last season. It feels like they might be able to turn a corner. So it's interesting. So the other over 10.5 or the other 10.5 totals are Alabama and Ohio State. Their money lines are different than Clemson's, but identical to one another. Alabama and Ohio State are both over 10.5 minus 200, under 10.5 plus 165. For Alabama, this is just hammer the over.
They're not going to lose
losing
twice.
2 games in their regular season.
Minus 200 sucks though.
I know. Well, I mean that they're trying to scare you off it. That's why, because they're going to win. It's weird. I don't know how you do that. I guess they feel like they'll get no action if they put it at 11. If they put over 11.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting because, the number too is you put it at 11, 11.5 is probably the number that I would pick.
Yeah.
Are they going to lose one game? But it's so hard to go undefeated in the SEC. So it's I guess with that, I would put the Ohio State one at 11.5 and probably take the under. If that was the number.
And Ohio State plays Notre Dame. Alabama plays Texas. I would be probably more concerned with Notre Dame beating Ohio State than I would be with Texas beating Alabama.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ohio State's schedule right now, and at home against Notre Dame, I think that'll be a 14-point favorite, and I think that's already been released. But they have Wisconsin this year in a cross-division rivalry, a cross-division matchup.
Right.
Playing at Michigan State, Iowa, Penn State 3 weeks in a row. But Penn State is like a noon game, I think, this year. So they don't have to play in the whiteout, which I think kind of helps Ohio State's ability to do that. So the problem is that Ohio State has to prove again that it's going to be really good. Like,
Well,
I mean, like last year, they weren't a very good football team.
I'm not worried about them at all offensively, but will Jim Knowles immediately improve the defense? Which, listen, he had some really good players at Oklahoma State last year, but he didn't have the kind of talent he's going to have to work with now.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to, I'm not going to play these because the odds are terrible, but I think the play for both of them is probably over because it's like really hard to envision 2 losses on these schedules. So, the thing going back to Clemson though that I wanted to make a point before we move on is Clemson is in a critical position right now as a program because it's not that they don't have talent on the roster. They've got a heck of a lot of talent. They're probably going to be top 5 in the composite rankings again. And if they figure things out on offense and that defensive line is healthy, I think they could win. I think they could make the playoff again this year. It's about 2-3 years from now that I'm worried about because, and I already saw that Dabo Swinney changed his official visiting policy for the spring. Did you see that?
I did see that. Which,
I think that stuff's going to have to start happening across the board.
Yeah, and that gives you an idea that maybe, okay, they are willing to adapt, and maybe they are going to stay relevant annually.
Well, I knew he was going to adapt, but you don't want to take 2 or 3 years to do it because 2 or 3 misses in a recruiting cycle completely ruins your chances of winning a national championship. And last year, I think they finished with the number 10 class overall, and they were like average. It wasn't just because their class was small; their average player ranking was like lower than teams like Michigan. So when you start putting yourself in that position, then you are no longer in the Alabama, Georgia class of college football. So that's a really tough over under for Clemson. But I guess is it a cop out to just say coin flip? That's what Vegas is saying.
I think it is a coin flip. I think that's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
And it's sort of I did not expect you to go this way with it, but I'm glad we talked about it because you've kind of talked me more into them being much better this season than they were last season, regardless of what happens with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I think it's possible that they can make the playoff again this year. I don't think that what Dabo built is just going to crumble to the floor.
No,
in like a 2-year period because he's got some weird recruiting policies and they had a down year. What I do think is over is them being a national championship favorite or contender annually, unless he gets his stuff back together and they start recruiting the way that they were a few classes like in 19 and 18. But they've got a lot of guys and they're probably the most talented team in their conference still. So if that's the case, then how could you possibly say that they're not going to make the playoff?
Can we go to my super weird one now?
Sure.
The Pac-12 South. Now, I think you probably helped set these because USC's over under. You ready for it? 9.5. And the over is -140 and the under is +120.
So, yeah, I mean, USC's 2022 schedule, let's just break it down real quick. So their number 1 non-conference game obviously is Notre Dame, right? So, Rice is a win. Stanford stinks. That's on the road. Fresno State
crushed them last year.
It's a different coach, and I'm viewing USC as Oklahoma.
And Tanner McKee is going to be one of the better quarterback prospects.
So let me just stop you before we continue this.
All right.
Do you think it is misguided of me to view USC the way that I would view Oklahoma last year? Because I'm not viewing USC as the Clay Helton USC anymore. Like my viewpoint of what they are has changed because their coach has changed and their quarterback has changed.
Oklahoma had been recruiting and had an identity and knew what its identity was from 2015 on.
I know, but USC had a really good class in 21.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like they don't have good players. So,
right.
They might your line theory is a real one. I get it. Like if you think their offensive line is going to suck, but did you see I tweeted some stat and I don't even know if it's true, but
PFF said they had the best.
They have one of the best offensive lines in the Pac-12.
Yeah. So watching the game suggests otherwise, but
yeah, no, I know. Sometimes those stats are kind of weird, aren't they? Where it's like every lineman on USC's offensive line has given up less than 1 sack. Or 1 sack or less all year, and it's like, well, they got their ass kicked the entire season, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I was gonna say does that mean Keaton Slovis and Jackson Dart are just gonna be, quick release, and Pitt and Ole Miss are in great shape? I don't know.
So I don't know. Maybe
they had a lot of time
to change to turn the page. So, but to me, I'm like, I look at that conference, and I was talking to a coach in the Pac-12 recently the last few days, and he was just saying it's just not a very good conference, and it's not like he's telling me that, something that we don't know, but it's not. So
So Vegas expects one side of it to beat up on the other considerably. So USC
Well, I bet
was
you. I mean, it's just like the same. Well, what side is going to beat up on the other?
well. They're saying the South beats up on the North, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only option, right? Unless you think Washington's going to be good again, and I think that their program's in the toilet right now. So,
But here's Utah over 8.5, or 8.5 over under, and the over 8.5 is minus 125. The under is plus 105. Seems perfectly reasonable. So and USC and Utah could be the fighting it out at the top of the South. That would make sense to me. Get ready. UCLA over under 8.
I mean, they won 8 games last year, didn't they?
I know. But if USC's better, that's one of those going away. If Utah's still good,
yeah, I don't remember. Like it was like last year, UCLA won 8 games, but they beat LSU in the non-conference.
right?
And like this year, UCLA's non-conference schedule is Bowling Green, Alabama State, and
Alabama
South
State.
Alabama.
Yeah.
So it's like you can automatic and they got to 8, but like that's an automatic win that they didn't have last year in the bag already. So even if they lost to USC when
they're at Oregon, they get Stanford at home. They're at Cal. So I mean, they do have a manageable schedule, but I cannot see everybody just winning everything. Like it's not a great league, but
well, that's not saying that
it's
everything's going to win everything. I think that those totals are in spots, and I think that you have to pick which team you think is going to do it.
Are you ready? Ready for the other one from the South that just blew my mind?
Is it Arizona State?
Arizona State over under 5.5. I mean,
and the funniest thing about Arizona State's is it high?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to lose to Oklahoma State on the road, right? So that's their non-conference game.
They've lost so much of their roster. Now, I know they got Emory Jones from Florida.
Say it again, baby.
They've lost so much of their roster. Is this a territorial cup thing coming? By the way, Arizona's is 2.5.
Do you think that Emory Jones has a chance to play in the NFL?
As a quarterback?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
Not unless some stuff's changed.
Because I remember I watched him at a camp when he was a senior in high school, and I remember thinking how that guy's arm is out of this world strong.
Oh, he has a very strong arm. He can ball down the field.
I know maybe he's not quick enough, or
it's more an accuracy thing. It's more a seeing the play develop, throwing to the correct person on time. Like, yeah, and that's why Kyle Trask passed him when both of them were the backups, and Felipe Franks got hurt, and they went to Trask. Emory was supposed to be the heir apparent eventually, but Kyle Trask got the ball out on time, and that was his biggest and his best skill in that offense. So that's and then the other piece of it is they've lost so much around Emory. It would have been Jaden Daniels, and they've lost a lot around the quarterback position there. It's going to be tough for him because he's going to be throwing to guys that are very inexperienced. He's going to be, have backs on the field that are inexperienced, and their line has some experienced players, but they've lost so much, and then their defense has lost some too.
And their skills is kind of weak, isn't it?
It is now because a lot of those guys hit the portal. So that's the thing. 5.5 feels very high for them. Yeah, I don't know. Does this mean that Jed Fish can take Arizona above 2.5 by stealing a couple of those games? Because he's, at least based on recruiting rankings, done a good job of building that roster. He had them playing harder last year, but they were in a really bad spot when he took over as well.
I think I would take. Well, here's the thing about Arizona. The only 2 non-Power 5 teams that they play on the schedule this year are at San Diego State, which San Diego State's a good football team.
Yeah, they are.
And North Dakota State.
Yep.
And last year they lost to NAU. So the problem with Arizona is that there's no gimme games.
Right. They're going to have to win them in the Pac-12.
And I assume that they could beat North Dakota State. unless I'm just not, I'm not an expert on like what North Dakota State's bringing this year.
Well, they'll bring a bunch of guys that aren't afraid of Arizona State or of Arizona, excuse me,
yeah.
and guys that play well together and are well coached. I mean, that's what they are every year. I mean, think about the quarterback situation at North Dakota State. Like they've lost guys and to the NFL and just reloaded.
Yeah, last year though, Arizona played in a lot of close games.
They did. They played hard.
Especially against Washington. There was a 1 touchdown game against USC. They lost, or they beat Cal. They actually played with Utah pretty well. There were some blowouts there, but here's the thing about Arizona that you have to keep in mind too. Jaden Delores, their quarterback now.
Yeah.
They actually have like a proven entity offensively at the quarterback position, which will be huge. And there was a massive influx of talent onto the roster, both in the portal and
See, it's like
recruiting.
the opposite of Arizona State.
I think that Arizona has a chance to beat ASU this year. And I think that game, where's that game this year?
That's a good question. Let's find out. I can tell you in Tucson.
The game's in Tucson. So
it is in Tucson. That's right.
Yeah.
Bear down, baby.
I think that I would take the over there, but I think the juice on the over is like minus 150, isn't it?
Believe so.
So, I mean, I think, I don't know. You can't circle which 3 games Arizona's going to win definitively, but it's possible, or definitely within the realm of possibility, they could beat San Diego State, right? So if they beat San Diego State and North Dakota State, I mean, they could be heading into the Pac-12 conference. And their other one's Mississippi State, which I'm not going to say they're going to win that game. They probably won't.
No, that's going to be a tough one. Mississippi State is very old this year, and they're gonna beat somebody they probably should in the SEC. Now,
yeah,
I don't think Arizona's do tend to lose games they're not supposed to, but that team is going to be pretty good.
I feel like Mississippi State would probably be the 3rd or 2nd best team in the Pac-12 this year, right?
Maybe. Yeah, Oregon's an 8.5 plus minus. Now they got Georgia to start. I think nobody's giving them that one.
No. 8.5. They play BYU this year.
Exactly. That's another issue there, but that seems a little low to me.
That might seem low. I might go over on that one.
I might be willing to go over on that just by beating Eastern Washington and going 8-1 in Pac-12 play.
Yeah. Also, like, what's Utah's? Do you have Utah's in front of you?
Utah's is 8.5. Also,
like, are you buying that Utah is just going to be awesome again?
No, not necessarily.
It's usually very hard for teams like that to sustain that through multiple seasons.
But it's weird because we kept wondering what happens when Utah has a quarterback.
Yeah, they got one.
And Cam Rising is that guy, and the the revolving door at offensive coordinator seemed to have slowed down. So I think that's why we feel like Utah is going to be more consistent now. But yeah, there's no guarantee of that. I think the way they beat Oregon, the 2 times they played them last year, just really left an impression. I mean, they kicked the living crap out of them. And we're in the game with Ohio State, despite having a lot of personnel deficiencies in that game. I mean, they're playing a backup receiver at corner against some of the best receivers in the country.
Well, I mean, Ohio State's receivers didn't play in that game.
Well, no.
Well, I mean, they're the young receivers. Yeah,
the young receivers, which are still better than everybody else's.
Ohio State, I think, had like 6 opt-outs out of that game. So
yeah, they did. But Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. were playing, who will be two of the best receivers
yes, that's
in the country.
Right. No, I know. I shouldn't have.
Yeah,
because I think Jackson Smith and Jigba might be the best receiver in college football already this year.
Well, he did lead Ohio State in receiving yards last year, right?
That's right. No, he's he's insanely good. So your point stands.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the line play thing, like to me, it's like I look at USC and I don't want to. It's funny because like last year I was the Texas homer, and I think this year I'm the USC homer.
You certainly are.
And honestly, if you really like do the 1,000-foot view of those situations, they're identical.
But here's the thing, though, and this is why you may be right. Like it's not one of those things where I feel like I'm always going to be right because I say, oh, the line. In the case of Texas and in the case of USC. They are signing linemen who are quality recruits, who other schools that are good want. So it's entirely possible that with the right coaching, they can have good line of scrimmage play.
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Bill Landis wrote a story about who is best at developing top end talent. And USC and Texas were both awful.
Yes, that's
like
correct.
truly and utterly awful. So, the thought process has always been, and it was for me last year when Sark took over Texas, is that if Texas has been terrible at developing its talent over the course of the past 10 years, that's got nothing to do with Sark and his staff. New infrastructure, new
But I
coaches,
do
new
feel like
everything.
that
So
eventually the right coach comes along who can.
that's what I'm saying. So you
Yeah.
have to give the new coach the benefit of the doubt. Now,
Yeah.
giving Sark the benefit of the doubt was a very controversial thing to do last year because he hadn't had much success at other places
Right.
as head coach. But Lincoln Riley going in there, it's was everything that he did at Oklahoma just a sham?
No.
And it's how much further along do you think Oklahoma was? This might be a really stupid statement, so forgive me in advance.
Okay.
But how much further along was the Bob Stoops Oklahoma team that Lincoln Riley took over from the USC team that he's taking over? Is it infinitely better to you, or do you think
a
they were
lot better? They were still good.
Yeah. I mean, but the Bob Stoops teams of the Oklahoma era, and maybe I'm just misremembering, but weren't they 2-3 lost teams for the last few years there?
So when Lincoln Riley came in as offensive coordinator, so the 2014 Oklahoma team was the one that caused all the changes that caused Lincoln Riley to be hired as the OC. That team was not that good. That team got torched by Baylor, got destroyed by Clemson in the Russell Athletic Bowl or the Champ Sports Bowl, whatever they were calling that game in Orlando at the time. And that necessitated a change on offense. Probably should have necessitated a change on defense, but they didn't make that change until the middle of the 2018 season. But they were still, once Lincoln Riley got there, they were very good. And the recruiting was very similar the entire time. They were getting the same type of players and the same quality of
But
players.
Oklahoma's gone through a complete facelift.
Yes.
What it became while it was humming under Lincoln Riley there was much
No,
better.
it didn't. It wasn't that big of a facelift. I mean, obviously schematically, when they went from Mike Stoops to Alex Grinch, there was a change. But I don't know that the type of players they recruited was all that different.
The final product and what you witnessed on television was completely different. And the fact that they did it every single year. And maybe part of the reason why is because they got Heisman Trophy winners every other year at quarterback, which
Oklahoma was still good, though. They never got bad.
I know. Was USC, but USC has been bad a few times, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. I mean, but the point is that if Lincoln Riley, how much of Oklahoma's success was the Oklahomaness of Oklahoma, and how much of Oklahoma's success was Lincoln Riley being a great coach?
I think we're going to find out at USC and at Oklahoma. Because I think Brent Venables
is going to happen quick too, right?
Yeah, the Oklahomaness of it all kicks in and it helps him a lot.
Because the Oklahomaness is real. That, it's not a word.
Yeah, this is a program that, other than the mid-90s and late 90s, has always been good. Always.
Yeah. It's do you think that USC has a cloud over its head, kind of like Texas does?
I think USC and Texas are very similar programs. And you can go now. Think about this: good in the 60s and 70s. So John Robinson and Darrell Royal, basically analogous there. And then kind of they get lost for a little while. Then somebody comes along who sort of unlocks and becomes the perfect coach for the perfect time there. And that's Pete Carroll and Mac Brown. And then they go trying to search for the next one of those, and they can't figure it out. USC more actually trying to find somebody from the Pete Carroll staff to do that. Texas, it was more, okay, this is the hot coach now. This is the hot coach now. But both of them failing miserably. And it may just be that Pete Carroll and Mac Brown were the perfect people for those places when they got there. And I don't know that they're that easy to win at. I think we assume they're easy to win at because we saw them make it look easy. But I think Florida's kind of another example of this too, where you saw Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer do it. Those are two Hall of Fame coaches who also did it somewhere else. Have you seen anybody else?
So that's the thing that is really interesting about Pete Carroll. It's was Pete Carroll the right personality and the right lightning in the bottle coach at USC at the right era? Or are we just going to come to find out that Pete Carroll is one of the greatest football coaches of all time and that can't be duplicated? Because if Lincoln Riley goes there and I pay you $1,000 in 3 years and he sucks, or they're much like the version of USC, that I don't know that it's a salvageable thing. I think that there are programs that get to a certain point. I think this would be an interesting podcast, actually.
Yeah.
What programs get to a coach where that coach is almost their final hope of doing it? It's like, I think that Nebraska.
I don't feel that way about USC or about Texas, because.
Do you feel that way about Nebraska right now?
I just think Nebraska is different. Like, Nebraska is never going to be what it was under Tom Osborne. And I think that because a lot of different things have happened in the game and in terms of the nation's population and so everything has changed on Nebraska. And so it would be very, very difficult to recreate that. But given where Texas and USC are and the resources they have, right, and the resources they have, I feel like you can feel confident that if you keep trying, you will eventually get it right.
If Lincoln Riley does not succeed at USC, I don't know what it looks like to succeed there. Like, if Steve Sarkisian fails at Texas, I'll be like, okay, who could they get in there that could really shake things up? Because he has failed at multiple places. You would want to see, like, and I know this is going to happen because he just went to LSU, but like Brian Kelly or somebody else that has been. I don't know, like, if Urban Meyer is a hireable coach anymore, and we've talked about this on the show.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know that he would do well in this era, but yeah.
But like, I think that if he went to Texas, they would be very good. Like, I think there are certain I think
if he went to Texas in 2012, they would be very good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess moving forward now, and I think maybe Urban Meyer is just the example that comes to my mind, because I'm talking about ready-made coaches who get it, have proven that they understand how to recruit, have won at a high level multiple times in multiple years at a previous place, and it's like already a ready-made, no scientific experiments, no let's wait and see bullshit. Just like somebody who was actually good enough to have accomplished that and is a ready-made package.
What USC did with Lincoln Riley this year, what LSU did with Brian Kelly.
And they're probably paying the guy over $10 million a year to do it. And he's like a young, offensive-minded, California cool, infinity pool in the backyard. Like, he is the perfect package of what I would expect USC would need in order to ever get back to the Pete Carroll years. Now, Pete Carroll has a great head of hair and had like that good look to him.
Ari, do you want to know what Pete Carroll was when he got there?
What?
A twice failed NFL head coach who was basically their seventh choice.
Yeah. No,
after Mike Riley turned them down like twice. I remember going back and looking at some letters to the editor of the LA Times after Pete Carroll was fired, or I'm sorry, after he was hired. One guy is like, I'm going to give it to the library now because the football program has no hope. So you don't know necessarily when that lightning is going to land in the bottle.
Yeah. But also too, and maybe I'm wrong and I'm just grasping at straws here, but failing in the NFL and then coming to the college level, I think is much different than failing in college multiple places and staying in college.
Oh, I would agree with that. Pete Carroll had never tried college. It turns out his personality is perfect for college.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's more surprising that he went to the Seahawks and won a Super Bowl than it was that he was
great. He took what he learned in college, tweaked himself as an NFL coach, and then became a great NFL coach too. But yeah, it is really interesting. I do think USC and Texas are both salvageable. It just you gotta pick the right person.
But I think that Texas is not in this is our last hope mode, and I feel like if USC doesn't get it done here, I don't even know what the next move is.
I don't think they're going to drop football, or if they don't get it done.
I'm not saying they're not going to drop football, but I'm wondering if every single time Texas hires a coach since Mac Brown, the question is this going to be the guy who brings Texas back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every single time USC hires a coach,
is this going to be the guy?
Is this going to be the guys like Pete Carroll, right? And it's like, if Lincoln Riley can't be like Pete Carroll, I don't know who can be like Pete Carroll.
This is the first time they've gone outside the family, because even though Clay Helton was not part of that, he was kind of tangentially part of it, and he was with Sark, and Sark was with Pete, and so there is that.
But I also put Miami in that conversation too. It's like if Mario Cristobal can't do it there.
Well, I would say if Mario Cristobal can't do it with the resources they say they're going to give him, because you go with the resources that Al Golden got, or that Manny Diaz got, or that anybody else got. No, they're not going to win. They're not going to compete for
I think
national
that what they
titles.
paid him was a proof of hopefully that they will.
It's not what they pay him; it's what they're paying the assistants. It's what they're saying they're willing to put into a recruiting budget. That
and
sort of
all
thing.
that stuff is discussed before you leave Oregon.
Exactly. He's not leaving Oregon without that being buttoned up.
But I also kind of feel like, in the symbolic nature of the discussion that we're having, that like the Miami native South Florida son returning back to bring the U back, who actually recruits his ass off and like understands what needs to be done, and probably, what do you think, the most competitive or most intense or hardest, I don't know what the right word is, place to recruit in the entire country is South Florida.
I think that's 100% correct.
So if that's true,
yeah,
then you finally found somebody who was weathered and seasoned enough, who was put in a situation where he had to recruit nationally and did a great job without home talent, that can not only connect to the local kids of Miami, but has proven that he can get on an airplane and close from far away.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, like, if he doesn't do it, then who's, like, because like Manny Diaz was like, oh, he's going to bring the U back. He's a program man. He gets it. Didn't work out. It's like, if it doesn't work out with the guy that you flew all the way out from Oregon and paid all this money and promised all these resources, it's like, what's next?
It's
like,
keep
I feel
trying. I mean, that's
I'm not
all
saying
it
that
is.
they're going to stop trying. I'm saying as a person who watches the sport and constantly thinks that these things are going to be rectified, it's like, at a certain point, like, I've given up hope that Texas is ever going to figure it out. It's like, if USC doesn't do it this year, I might give up hope that USC can figure it out. Not this year. I mean, this tenure.
Yeah, you've got to go through a couple more cycles. One, you're not cynical enough. Like, you believe every time somebody gets hired, they're going to fix it, and that's obviously not true. That won't happen. But so you gotta get.
But the Sark hire at Texas was far less sexy than the other two.
No, yeah, nobody was going, well, that's definitely going to work. There was a lot.
I think more people thought it wasn't going to work than it was. Like, everybody who looks at USC, like, I've never spoken a word to Colin Cowherd in my entire life. I don't know the man, but like, this guy is like rooting, is his entire show is how great USC is going to be.
I think it's a little bit of shtick, but yes, no, and that's perfectly understandable. I mean, look, there's a reason Alabama went out and got Nick Saban from the Dolphins after Rich Rodriguez said no. There really wasn't another choice. Like, if they wanted to be good, that was the guy they needed. And Lincoln Riley gives them the best chance. I'm with you on that. I just know that sometimes the sure things don't work.
Yeah.
So I do think, I would think Lincoln Riley will work.
So who are the biggest sure thing busts then?
That's a good question.
Because Jim Harbaugh's got a little bit of a different hue to him now too, doesn't he?
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh's not a bust. And I don't think he was a bust before. He was winning the games he was supposed to win. He just wasn't winning the big one. And so now he's beating Ohio State. I still don't know, like, let's say the order of things gets restored this year. I don't know that we're looking at Jim Harbaugh as an all-time great college coach at that point. I don't know that we look at him as fulfilling the promise that he had when
the promise was a 10-year war.
Yeah. Which unless they continue to win, it won't be. So that would be one. Now you can go back into like when Texas A&M hired Jackie Sherrill. That was supposed to be a no-brainer slam dunk, and that didn't work. Texas A&M's had a few of those where they thought they had the guy, and then it didn't work. Now Jimbo, the jury is out. We'll see what happens with him. Tom Herman was supposed to be
Tom Herman's a good one. But then you're right back at the place that you started.
Yeah, back to Texas.
Like, was it a Herman thing or was it a Texas thing? Jimmy Lake was a pretty big bust.
Oh, he was. But I don't know that people thought he was a sure thing. I thought that was a good succession plan. I mean, who wouldn't? He was one of the best parts of what Chris Peterson was doing there. And you thought, okay, well, if he can take what Chris Peterson was doing and then maybe ratchet up the recruiting just a tad, that's a pretty good combination. But it turned out he just wasn't
recruiting got
very
worse.
Good. Yeah, and he wasn't very good at managing a program. And
you ready to laugh again?
I'm ready.
Charlie Strong.
I don't know that people thought he was a slam dunk when he went from Louisville to Texas.
No?
He was very good at Louisville, but I don't think people were like, he's going to win 8 national titles at Texas. Nobody thought he was a sure thing.
What about Willie Taggart?
I thought I was wrong, but there were plenty of people who were right about Willie Taggart at Florida State. I thought he was going to be great, and I was very wrong on that. But there were lots of people who doubted him from the get-go.
Yeah. So it's like, because like we were talking about sure thing hires that didn't pan out, and it's like if Lincoln Riley in this fake universe that we're making doesn't do well, like what would be a bigger bust than that? It might be the biggest coaching bust of the last decade.
I think it would be, because, or if Brian Kelly doesn't work out at LSU.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I think it's the same situation.
Now, Lincoln Riley to USC.
Oh, how about Scott Frost coming off an undefeated season and then still hasn't gotten to a bowl game?
Because that was a sure thing. Because like before the last time we talked about this, Ohio State hadn't lost to Michigan yet. And
yes.
Jim Harbaugh and Scott Frost were the two examples that we used. But I don't know if I can articulate this the right way, but the way that Lincoln Riley fits in at USC is like a glove. It's like Les Miles going to LSU is a nice hire, and like somebody who is won at the highest level, I guess, at every place he's
going
been.
To LSU. He was going to LSU from Oklahoma State. Nobody thought that was going to be.
Who did I say? What did I just say? Les Miles?
You said Les Miles.
Okay, well, I'm an idiot because I meant to say Brian Kelly.
Okay, now that right.
yeah. So I have this thing in my brain.
Lincoln Riley fits USC like a glove. Like he's from Muleshoe, Texas.
No, I'm just saying the aura.
And was raised in the air raid. Like
it's the exact. It's my favorite hire.
You just
of the
think
because
he's handsome that he belongs in LA.
I actually think his brother's more handsome.
Garrett Riley.
I saw
there
him at TCU camp. I'm like, you're better looking than Lincoln.
Who knew?
I didn't say that to him, but if you listen,
Garrett Riley stand podcast.
Yeah, I mean he's a handsome offensive coordinator at TCU. He's in a pretty good spot.
So which Spavital brother's better looking?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to become the podcast host that's best at identifying the best looking coaches.
The best looking coaching brother of a coaching brother tandem.
Best looking coaches in college football. Marcus Freeman's very attractive.
Yes, he is. He's a handsome man. Is Zach Kitley handsome? I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to imagine his face.
Jim Harbaugh's handsome.
In the I'm an NFL quarterback kind of way. Oh, Zach Kitley he's pretty handsome. Who is the most handsome coach in college football?
I mean, Kyle Whittingham's really handsome.
Kyle Whittingham is very handsome. He's got the little salt and pepper thing going on.
Yeah. Mario Cristobal's handsome.
Yeah. Mario Cristobal. There's nobody who just blows you away.
Cliff Kingsbury was the clear and honest answer.
Right.
Clear.
That's the thing.
I don't know if there's a Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury looked like Ryan Gosling, who shockingly makes a second appearance on this podcast in 2 weeks. But
Larry Fedora was handsome.
Yeah. Larry Fedora was and still is. I know he's coaching the New Orleans Breakers of the USFL now, but ripped, like six-pack beyond age 50.
Larry Fedora strikes me as like the handsome, like single guy who lives in the Keys.
Except he's married.
I know. I'm just saying, like the way he physically looks, he looks like a guy who does like catamaran tours in the Keys.
So
and like
Mike Leach,
like just taking all these hot divorcees out on dates and stuff.
I hung out with Mike Leach one time. This is between Texas Tech and Washington State. He doesn't have a job. He's working for Sirius XM radio at the time. I hung out with him for a night in Key West, and we met some of his friends from Key West out there. One of his friends is that person you just described. All of his stories began with she and her boyfriend were having a fight and end with him tumbling out a window.
So he's the guy from
room.
Along Came Polly, except
Basically,
American.
yes.
Are you for scuba, Luben? Yes. Oh, by the way, that's a really good segue. Somebody told me, and tweeted this at me, and it's been giving me a headache, and I wanted to tell you about this.
Okay.
Because I don't know where you stand.
I have one more set of totals after this, but I want to hear this.
This has become a very good podcast. It has nothing to do with totals, but somebody wrote, I wrote today, because I was watching Happy Gilmore while feeding my daughter, and
as one does.
Happy Gilmore. Yeah, you watch when you feed. You have to watch TV because it takes a
Absolutely.
minute.
Yeah.
And said, why have they not made a movie starring Ben Stiller that takes us through his life as a nursing home orderly in Happy Gilmore, the owner of
Yes.
Camp Hope in Heavyweights, and the owner
Your
of Globo
fingers
Gym.
hurt? Now your back's going to hurt.
She just pulled landscaping duty. That guy, the owner of Camp Hope, if you've never seen Heavyweights, that's the biggest embarrassment I've
And
ever heard in my
White
entire
Goodman.
life.
I mean, White Goodman's
they're all the
same
same character,
Yeah.
and I want to watch an entire movie about his upbringing and his like different spots, and I think that would be funny. And then somebody tweeted at me the most offensive thing anybody has ever tweeted at me today, and I got to go find it, but it like bothered me. He said, Ben Stiller sucks hairy ass. You named the 3 bright spots in his career. America cinema and comedy in general will be better without him in it at all.
I mean, is that the guy Ben Stiller? Like, is that who was dating Christine Taylor before Ben Stiller met her? Like,
I cannot believe. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Ben Stiller.
No objective human being would think that about Ben Stiller and his.
Because I responded, number 1, Along Came Polly, and that's not including the 3 classics I just mentioned.
Zoolander,
Meet the Parents, Zoolander, Something About Mary. He was in The Cable Guy. That was funny.
Yeah.
Royal Tenenbaums was hilarious. And then there's a really underrated movie that nobody ever talks about that I find hilarious, which is The Heartbreak Kid. Have you seen that movie?
I have not.
You should
when
watch
I hear
that
the Heartbreak
movie.
Kid, I think of Shawn Michaels.
The Heartbreak Kid is when he like is a 45-year-old man who's never gotten married or settled down, and then he meets somebody and he thinks he loves her and he marries her like in a week or 2 weeks because he's just desperate to finally make that step in his life. And then they go on a honeymoon, and the entire honeymoon is him learning everything that's wrong with her. And it's literally the funniest movie of all time. Like
all right, I have to grab
like,
that one.
honestly, you should watch that. But like, if you don't like Ben Stiller,
Tropic Thunder,
if you go through the list, like, how could you possibly say that comedy would be better without him? All those cameos he did in Curb Your Enthusiasm, like the guy's amazing.
Yeah,
that makes Came Polly is one of the greatest movies of all time.
That really makes no sense. I mean, Dodgeball, which we just mentioned, is not Dodgeball without Ben Stiller.
Yeah. So anyway,
and Meet the Parents, the entire franchise. Night at the Museum, like you'll see when your kid's a little bit older, like she's gonna love that when she's 8-9 years old.
There is one thing that I have to do as a father that I've never done.
Oh, in the Madagascar series, by the way,
I've never watched
a
single Pixar movie. So.
Oh yeah, you're
like maybe in Toy Story when I was a kid, but like I've never watched. There's a lot of these adults who go to Disney movies without children, and I find that strange. So now that I have a child, like she's obsessed with this video on YouTube that we watch every now and then, like because he only has like 10 minutes a day of TV time. But we put on Moana.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched that movie?
I have watched.
There's some nice songs in that she.
You're welcome. I sing all the time.
I've never watched the movie, but like I'm bracing myself for that stage in life where I start watching all these Disney movies.
Oh, you will watch them all. Now I heard them all because I lived in the age of the screen on the back of your headrest in the minivan.
Oh yeah.
So I heard a lot of them, but no, I mean all of those movies I've seen. I'm warning you now. There's a 2-minute sequence at the beginning of the movie Up. That is the most emotionally devastating sequence in cinematic history.
I don't think I'm going to watch. I don't know. Like
it is, you don't see anything gory. You don't see anything bad or violent.
Somebody's mom dies like in Bambi.
I will not describe it to you. I will just tell you, you will be wrecked at the end of it.
So here's the thing that I want to ask you before we finish the totals. So my daughter will start watching movies in a year or two, probably, right? Or like just like at least like following along enough to like them.
Yes.
Do I start her with the like Frozen, the current Disney movies, or do we start her with like the classics from our childhood, like The Lion King,
all of them,
Aladdin, and like I want to start her with the ones that we grew up watching because I feel
absolutely.
like
now all of those are back as live action movies, so that there's no problem.
No, I know, but like isn't like Mulan and Snow White, and those are like the real Disney movies, right? Sleeping Beauty, Pinocchio, The Lion King,
Beauty and the Beast,
Little
Mermaid.
Yeah, right. So like
she'll pick her favorite princess,
do you
whatever
think
princess she decides she identifies with, and like my daughter is 11, but she's trying to go back and catch a few that she hadn't watched before. So she watched Brave the other day. She'd never seen Brave.
I've never even heard of that.
Brave is Merida. She's got the curly red hair. She She's an
Do you
archer.
think your daughter will look back at Frozen and the current Disney movies that they're making now the same way that you and I would look back at like The Lion King?
Frozen will be the one that she looks at like we look at The Lion King or Aladdin. Yes.
So you've
Frozen
seen all these movies, right?
Oh, 100%.
There's
Yeah.
no freaking way that Frozen is better than The Lion King.
Frozen is an amazing movie.
Is it better than The Lion King?
I don't know. They're both good.
I don't know, like Lion King.
The music in Frozen is a lot better than the music in The Lion King, and I say that as someone who loves Hakuna Matata and Can't Wait to Be King and Can You Feel the Love Tonight. And
you're also talking to somebody who hasn't been to Disneyland or Disney World in over a decade. I've never been to Disney World.
I'm not a big Disney World fan. Now, we did have fun when we went to Hollywood Studios a few weeks ago and went to the Star Wars stuff because I'm a big Star Wars nerd.
But are all the exhibits the old things that we used to watch?
Like some of them are still there. Like It's a Small World ride, the Jungle Cruise. Now they suck. They're super lame because if you go from the Magic Kingdom where those rides, or even if you're in the Magic Kingdom, if you walk from It's a Small World and walk 50 yards to the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is a new ride and built in the last 10 years, it's awesome. And Small World just really sucks. But you have to wait in line for It's a Small World. Like my whole thing.
No, we're going to be spend extra money for the pass people. We're not going to be waiting in line.
Well, it doesn't work that way quite. So you can't just now. You could do the private tour one where they take you to the front of the lines. So that's a lot of extra money.
I don't care how much money that is that we're doing it. I'm not standing in line for
those people.
Do you think that's a bad thing? Is that part of being a father at an amusement park?
No, I hate
it for 6 hours.
Every time we go, I say, why did we pay so much money to sweat and stand in line? It's incredibly stupid.
So why did you just like condescendingly say I should be one of those people?
Because I always wanted to be one of those people and I never got.
How much more money are we talking here?
I don't know. It may as well be $1 billion. It's probably something I could actually.
You could definitely afford it.
Scrape together my pennies, could probably afford it. But no,
let me ask you this. And then we have to get back to. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just have one set of totals that I thought was interesting, but we'll keep going here.
We said, like, how much money is a Alabama scholarship worth? Without knowing the price, how much money are you willing to pay so that the next time that you go to Disney World in July, you don't have to wait in a line? Without knowing what the price is, what is reasonable for that? I would pay for my family if I was flying to Florida,
right?
And I would spend $1,000, probably more.
Okay, I don't think you'd get it.
It's way more than that.
You would, because you'd be going for a number of days. It might be less than that for a day, but I don't think it would be less than that for multiple days. I think I was going to say you're probably for that vacation all in flying, plane tickets to Disney, hotel at Disney, the private tour deal. If you're spending 4 or 5 days, you're probably all in $15,000.
Are you? Sorry, that was almost an F-bomb. Are you kidding me?
It's expensive, dude. It's expensive if you don't
have.
Yeah, it's expensive.
For 4 or 5 days at Disney World.
Yes,
you could take her on a Mediterranean cruise and see all of Europe for 2 weeks for $15,000.
You absolutely could,
dude. That is such a scam. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to curse. That's crazy.
This
$15,000. Get out of here.
What I tell my wife,
and I'll stay at home and watch it on television.
So we had Disney annual passes, and obviously ours is easier because we can just drive 2 hours and we're down there. We had Disney annual passes for a few years. The kids sort of aged out of them, and then we switched to Universal. Now Universal has a deal where if you stay at one of 3 hotels there, you get express passes that are unlimited for everybody in your party for the day you check in, all the days you're there, and the day you check out, which is a pretty sweet deal, especially if you get a decent rate on the room. So that does feel pretty good. Now, it's not right to the front of the line, but it's a significantly shorter wait. So I think that's one way to kind of manage it. But Disney doesn't work like that.
Disney is just a big racket.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They all are. They're all designed to suck as much money out of you as possible. Speaking of money that you may be losing, I got one more set of lines that I wanted to run by you, Ari, because this is one. I saw it and I was like, how can these two things be the same? And then I thought about it, and I think And I was like, I think Ari will agree with Vegas here about them being the same. Michigan State and Nebraska.
Before you
Both.
even say it, you got to take into the side of the conferences they play into account.
I know. I'm aware of that, Ari.
Okay.
But let's also take into account the results from last year and what they bring back. Michigan State, Nebraska, both 7.5. Both if you want to take the over minus 125. Both if you want to take the under plus 105. I realize that Nebraska's schedule is easier. I get that.
It's infinitely easier. I'm looking at it right now.
But do you believe that Nebraska can win 8 games this year?
I do.
Okay.
They play Northwestern on a
Okay.
Saturday in August. I think it's like the week 0
It's in
game.
Dublin. Yeah, week 0 in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that might be a toss-up, right? 50-50.
They killed Northwestern last year, but Northwestern's one of those, the even years, they tend to be good.
What happens in Ireland is completely out of our
Right.
purview. Okay. North Dakota, that's a win.
Yep.
Georgia
Not
Southern-
North Dakota State.
No, North Dakota. North Dakota State, if that was them, would have a pretty gnarly schedule. Georgia Southern, they're probably pretty good, right? But that's still a win.
Clay Heltons.
Yes. Then they're going to lose to Oklahoma. Then they've got Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota. That's the meat of their schedule. That's 7 wins right there before they get to the final 3.
Can they beat Minnesota? Can they beat Purdue? These are legitimate questions.
I actually like the over of this bet.
Really?
Honestly, I know. We're sitting here in June and like we are 6 months removed from the season and the trauma that Scott Frost losses have put on our brains. It's like so easily we forget how
you and I sat there and watched that Illinois game last year.
Well, it's not even just that
how is this even happening?
It's not just that they lose; it's how they lose.
Right, exactly.
They lose the thing that I think you have to ask yourself when it comes to Nebraska is how much more bad luck can a program possibly have? Like if you lose in a crazy way like 6 times in the same year, like is the next year going to be a part 2 of that, or are you finally going to get the ball to bounce your way?
That's why I keep writing that the math says that things will be different for them, but it's hard.
And
for
their schedule sucks.
It would be hard for me to lay down actual money on them winning 8 games when there's been no evidence that they can do that.
If they hit the under of the season, on the season, I think Scott's done.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
He's probably done before the end of the season. But, okay, so let's take it to the other part. Obviously, Michigan State's schedule is harder because they're in the East. But
and they play Washington, don't they?
They do. And I believe it's in Seattle. So,
yeah.
I think they win that game.
And they also play Wisconsin as a crossover.
Yes. So, do you believe that Michigan State will win 7 or fewer?
Western Michigan's a win. Akron's a win. That's 2. Washington, I think, is a win. That's 3. Minnesota's a win. 4. Maryland, 5. I think they're going to be 5-0. But then the rest of their schedule is.
Then it gets pretty hairy. Yeah.
What's it? 7.5.
It's 8.5. 7.5. Sorry.
7.5.
Yeah,
okay. So then they play at Ohio State. They'll probably lose. Wait, that's home though. They'll probably lose, but that's
still will probably lose. I think that's a safe.
Wisconsin's homecoming, and that's at home in mid-October. That's a 50-50 game, in my opinion.
At Michigan is going to be that may be the one that's well, no, because they still have Illinois and Rutgers after that.
Illinois, Rutgers, and Indiana 3 straight. I would take the over for both of them.
Okay, it hit me weird to see them both be so identical.
It is, but it's very deceiving because one team has got an infinitely harder path.
Yes.
Like Nebraska's schedule is kind of a joke. And I get that they have to play at Oklahoma, but it's like I also feel like, and I don't know if this is just like a dream that I will wake up from, but it's like if Nebraska somehow finds a way to pull one out of their ass and beat Oklahoma on the road, is it at home or is that on the road?
I believe Oklahoma's there this year. I believe they're going to Lincoln.
Oh yeah, Nebraska's in Lincoln. Okay.
Yeah.
So if they find out a way somehow to win that game, Oklahoma's still trying to figure out the new staff. They got early season, whatever.
Right.
They win that game. The entire city of Lincoln, Nebraska is going to catch on fire in the best possible way.
Oh, there will be just chili and cinnamon rolls flying.
Girls running around with chili all over them.
Yeah, there'll be no balloons because they're not doing the balloon release anymore. But there will be chili and cinnamon rolls. Just
what happened
airborne.
to the balloon thing? again? There's like rubber or something shortage or something?
Helium shortage.
What do you mean helium shortage? I don't even know what that means. Where does it come from?
Russia.
Helium comes from Russia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have to Google. This is going to be in my Google search history for next week.
Great.
Because I don't even know what, how is it made? Is it just a natural element?
I don't know.
Okay.
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay. So we don't get to, so you're telling me that because of what's going on in Russia.
I think there are also medical uses for it too, that they feel like maybe those are more important than
helium.
You
can end this podcast now, but I'm now going down the helium.
Now I feel like we should stick with you.
Is produced naturally underground through the radioactive decomposition and decay of certain elements such as uranium and thorium. Sounds toxic.
There's maybe some Chernobyl.
You remember that game we used to do where you suck in helium through the
when you like this,
yeah. That's probably
we were wasting
one way ticket to throat cancer. So
and we were wasting a very precious element apparently.
Yeah, so, no, that's you learn something. The more you know.
So, but yes, maybe that's what you should do instead of had the Mayo bath at the end of the Mayo Bowl.
You have to suck in a helium balloon.
No, but if Nebraska beats Oklahoma. Like you dump a giant pot of chili all over Scott Frost and then drop cinnamon rolls on him. And everybody dumps their cinnamon rolls.
I've got a feeling we're going to bet
Frost.
that game. I feel like we're going to bet that game, me and you somehow. We got to do one Nebraska one. I think it should be an annual tradition where you and I watch a Nebraska game together.
We have a tarp off game that we need to decide on too.
This is tarp off.
I forget which coworker talked us into this, but basically...
Dude, you're gonna want to lose. You want to show off your body. Like, what do you?
One
of
us is gonna. It's not gonna be. It would not.
Dude, I'll do tarp off for me, and then you can do underwear off for you.
No, it would not be comfortable to do a shirtless podcast. Like my skin would stick to this chair. Like it would not be great.
Guys, I the people who listen to this podcast, it is progressively getting weirder and weirder, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but imagine how many subscribers we'd lose on the YouTube channel. For either case, people are not coming to look at us.
If the camera was up at your face, who would care if your pants were on or off?
Well, I don't wear pants for this podcast anyways, Ari.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, okay, well, we'll come up with I'll do a tarp off episode. You think I'm afraid? I got hamburger meat right here. Check it out.
I know you're not afraid.
Star of David there. Everything's...
This is going to be tremendous. So, yes, if you have any ideas about what should be our tarp off bet, which game, I want to say give us something in week 1, 2, or 3 that seems.
You're not going to give me more time to get in better shape?
It's plenty of time.
Diet plenty of time.
I thought it already started.
No, I always say that whenever
all right.
It's going well.
My watch tells me you're working out, so I'm impressed. I'm ready. You're going to be ready for that tarp off bet. All right. So yes, Andy_Staples on Twitter, at Ari Wasserman on Twitter. Hit us up. Andy_Staples, Ari Wasserman on Instagram. Hit us up there. We need to know what game will we be betting the tarp on. And then later this week, Manny Navarro, our Miami beat writer, will join for a State of the Program podcast about the Miami Hurricanes. We were talking about Mario Cristobal earlier. He brings hope. They have a mega booster who is doing lots of NIL deals, who also has a stock offering that has now come under some scrutiny. And it's going to be a fascinating year in Coral Gables. So we'll talk to Manny about that. That's your Tuesday episode. Stars Matter on Thursday. It's going to be a big week here at the Andy Staples Show and friends. Ari, it's been a pleasure. Get to work.